Good evening and welcome to Munich Dialogues on Democracy for our program, Reporting Ukraine. It's really lovely to see so many familiar faces out in the audience tonight, as well as so many new faces, and a warm welcome to all of you joining us online as well, from wherever your home is. The team here at America House, as well as our Munich chapter of the Yale Club of Germany, are celebrating a milestone tonight. It has been 5 years this month since we had our very first Munich Dialogues event and started this community with all of you. With your support, we have grown and we've had some really wonderful events together. Our mission, our motto is to educate, engage, and empower our audiences to think critically and to act deliberately to keep democracy around the world healthy. And it's unfortunately even more relevant now than it was 5 years ago. And you all are part of a really amazing community. So please do plan on sticking around afterwards. You might have seen on the way in, we've got a pizza truck out front, and we are going to celebrate these 5 years. We also will have some live jazz from one of our members, Jochen Schmidt-Hamburg, who is just one of the amazing talents that are a part of our group. So thanks to Jochen as well from now. So as for tonight, the news cycle over the past few weeks has been dominated by the turmoil, terror, and war in Israel and Gaza. But the war in Ukraine rages on in the background. And with winter weather coming, the population there is staring down another very cold season of terror at the hands of Putin and the Russian army. Reporting from a war zone is never easy, especially when the front lines are in your own country. And for the last decade, our guest tonight, Nastya Stanko, has distinguished herself inside Ukraine and abroad as one of the most respected and oft-cited journalists, covering corruption, conflict, and Ukrainian state institutions. Since Russia's full-scale invasion almost 2 years ago, her reports embedded with the Ukrainian military on the front lines have been watched and shared millions of times. She brings a gritty, authentic, and at times uncomfortable but always honest picture of the war. She's editor-in-chief of, I hope I pronounce everything right, Slidstvo, a Ukrainian investigative outlet. Previously, she was chief editor and a longtime correspondent at Hromadske. She's the recipient of numerous international prizes, including the International Press Freedom Award from the Committee to Protect Journalists. Returning to Munich Dialogues on Democracy, Joshua Yaffa is a contributing writer for The New Yorker, where he covers Russia and Ukraine. And if you missed his fabulous event with us last March, it is available on the America House YouTube channel, or you can go to our website and click on past events and catch it. He is also the author of Between Two Fires, Truth, Ambition, and Compromise in Putin's Russia, which is a fantastic book, and it won the Orwell Prize in 2021. He's currently the inaugural writer-in-residence at Bard College, Berlin. So now is where I say a very special thank you to Bard College Berlin for proposing this joint event tonight. I would like to welcome to Munich the team from Bard, and now I'll give the word to Florian Becker, who will say a few words about Bard College Berlin.
Hi, I'm also very happy to be here tonight, and thank you to the America House and to the Munich Dialogues on Democracy for having us. I, like you, am very keen to hear from Nastya and from Joshua. Nastya traveled more than 3 days by train in the last 3 days to be here, so I fully understand that we want to get going here. But since Bard College Berlin is so small, I do feel it incumbent upon me to say just a couple of words. We are about the institution. We are small, we are untypical. Obviously, we are both German and American. This makes the America House a very fitting place for us to be at with you. But we are also global in a very real sense. We only have about 320 students who are pursuing bachelor degrees in the social sciences, the humanities, and the arts, but they are from about 60 different countries, all continents except Antarctica last time I checked. and they have to get along inside and outside of the classroom, and that's part of our mission, of course. Dialogues on democracy taking place on a daily level. More than 16% of our students, all of them, almost more than 80% of them are on various kinds of scholarships and financial aid, but 16+% are on special scholarships for students displaced by war or by political oppression from very different places, including Syria. Speaking of conflicts that are in the background right now, Afghanistan, and about 18 students currently from Ukraine. In addition, we do have professorial fellows from Ukraine, some of whom with us in Berlin, and of course, as you can imagine, quite a few of them who are being supported, but who are still teaching and working in Ukraine. All of this we do without public support, so of course I have a little bit of a hope that some of you will get interested in what we're doing up there in Berlin, perhaps look us up and perhaps consider joining our circle of generous supporters. But now please join me in welcoming Nastya and Joshua.
Thanks, Bartley and Florian, for the generous introductions. Thanks to America House for having us, and all of you for being here and being interested in hearing from us, or really hearing from Nastya. I'll start with a personal introduction of Nastya and our friendship. I'm privileged and honored to call Nastya not just a colleague, but indeed a friend. I met you, Nastya, as you remember, in day 2 or 3 of the war after Russia's invasion last February, in the lobby of a largely abandoned hotel in downtown Kiev, which itself was largely abandoned, or at least felt that way. It was a very nervous time, to put it mildly. Russian tanks were bearing down on the city from multiple directions. Roadblocks and troops were everywhere, people few, everyone awaiting the Russian onslaught. I had, frankly, little idea of what I was supposed to do, neither as a journalist nor just as a person accidentally thrust into the middle, or waking up, rather, in a war zone against all of my plans and ideas about what I wanted from my career and life. But there I was, and I was immediately impressed, put at ease, and frankly in awe of you, Nastya, of your professionalism, courage, commitment to the story, ability to stay calm under fire and somehow manage to keep others calm at the same time, but also your deep and genuine humanity, and which you bring first and foremost well, to your life and to your work. And that is, to my eye, what has made Nastya such a revered correspondent, especially over these last 2 years, inside Ukraine certainly, but also really all over the world. As we heard a moment ago, your reports from the front with the troops, really in the trenches, are visceral, unflinching, and above all real, which means they're sometimes inspiring and heroic, but other times dark, tragic, irredeemably sad, uncomfortable. And that is one of the things I admire most about your work, is that despite the pressure from all sides, whether that be government, military, your own colleagues in Ukrainian journalism, sometimes viewers, Ukrainian citizens, who want a different picture of the war, a uniformly positive picture of the war, an inspiring picture of the war. The war, of course, is not always those things, and is oftentimes quite the opposite. And you should be commended by, for how you retain your composure, values, and commitment to the truth. My first question, which I promised to ask in just a moment, I want to start with one more bit of prologue, which is to read from an essay you wrote last year, which really brings to life how you are at once many things. A remarkable award-winning journalist, as we heard. You're also a mom of a nearly 3-year-old son, and you're also Ukrainian, which means you too have to run through the bomb shelter during air raid sirens, or huddle in the bathroom with your son in the middle of the night. You too have had many friends, family members killed since the start of the war. And you have to deal with all of that while you also try and do your job. And I'm going to read a short passage from an essay you wrote last year that touches on that. I travel again to report from the front. The worst moment is when I have to hug Ostap goodbye. He clings to me with his tiny hands and doesn't want to let go. I don't cry, ever. But every time at this moment, I think, if I die, my child will be left without a mother. This is irresponsible. In July 2021, I decided to quit my job as a journalist and dedicate my time to my 6-month-old son. Then, on February 23rd, 2022, I went to the independent media channel Hromadske and offered my services as a war correspondent in case something started. I thought that not doing this was irresponsible. I now spend close to 2 weeks a month on the front and 2 weeks at home. Every time I take a trip, it's about 1,000 kilometers there and back. Every time I both want and don't want to go to the front, and every time I think I might die. At the same time, I think that it's irresponsible to leave my small child a half-orphan. Every time, when I wait for a long time near the front for permission and papers to do my work, I think, God, what am I doing here? Who needs this reporting? It would be better if I studied tactical medicine. Maybe then I would save someone. And my question is, 2 years into the war, what is it that continues to motivate you to get on the train, get in the car, go to the front, make these reports, when you could be at home with Ostap, you could be, as you allude to in this piece, retrained as a tactical medic, helping in another way? What is it that keeps you in journalism and keeps you going time and again to the front?
Thank you, Joshua. Thank you for inviting, and thank all of you that you are here and come to see me and hear what I will talk about. The first, I am only in one earring. Maybe you don't see this, but the second one, left one, I took off because the technical team told me that it can be like here. That's why. But it's important to say that it's a rooster. And maybe someone of you knows this story about this rooster. We had this, it's traditional rooster, clay rooster we have, a clay rooster, and this clay rooster was on the one small shelf on the wall in Borodyanka. It's a small town near Kyiv, and this town was almost destroyed, and very big building was destroyed, in the middle of this building was just big hole, and just one small clay rooster was on the one shelf on the wall, and that's all. And sometimes when someone asks Ukrainians, how are you? We say that try to hold as that rooster on the wall, on the shelf on the wall. Yeah, and it's important for me to wear these earrings. Small introduction about this, and some things changed after this essay. My son and my husband, my family now live in Kyiv. We were in Kyiv before the war, and on the first day of the full-scale invasion, we ran from Kyiv to Ivano-Frankivsk. This is my native town, which is close to the Poland border on the west part of Ukraine. And next morning, we came back with my husband to Kyiv, and my son was all this year and a half with my parents. And I traveled, as Joshua already mentioned, to the front line, which is 1,000 kilometers and back. And now all of us live in Kyiv. And I'm editor-in-chief of Investigative Project. And now mostly I don't go to the front line by myself, but send my journalists to the front line. And this is even big responsible for them, because if you think that you can die, it's not so hard and so scared as you send another people to some dangerous place and always think what can happen with them, and if something bad happened, how I tell this to their beloved ones, and this is much more responsible job. And yeah, this is about changing. Why I'm still doing this? It's a tough question, I think. Very tough, but for the one hand, I can tell that it's important still to show to the world, even to Ukrainians, what's happened, what still happened on the front line, what still happened in the villages where people still live near the front line. In the, not even villages, but big towns also. For example, Kherson on the south part of Ukraine, it's a big town, and there's a shelling every day, and every day people kill just civilians are killed there. But also, for me, it's a most normal place for me to be during the war, like
Talk
to
about
be
that
and
transformation.
yeah.
How is that? How is a place that is supremely not normal for most people, and I think not for you either, although you have plenty of experience covering conflict beginning with the Russian invasion in Donbass in 2014. So you were not entirely new to war, but still, on this scale, of course, this is new for everyone. So how did something that for most people, and I think at one point for you too, was so abnormal, became something like normal?
We were talking about this yesterday, that, for example, for some Ukrainians, not normal anymore to live, to stay in Ukraine. And maybe you see, you know, some Ukrainians who live here in Munich, in other German cities. For some Ukrainians, not normal to live in Kyiv, because, for example, from Friday to Saturday night, it was shelling by 75 drones. Kyiv was under the shelling. And, for example, what we are doing in that situation, we are going with my son to the bathroom, and I try to explain him. He will be 1st of January next year. And I try to explain him why we should go to the bathroom, why he can't turn back to his bed. And it's very hard to explain to a 3-year-old child why and what is war, but I try to do it somehow. And for some Ukrainians, not normal stay in Kyiv. For some Ukrainians, not normal stay in Kharkiv. But for some Ukrainians, normal stay in Kherson with their children. For some Ukrainians, normal stay in Avdiivka, which under the siege now. It's a city in Donbass region, which is frontline actually now. I think it's very hard to explain what is normal for Ukrainians now, because it depends from people. Some people think that they will not leave their house, their home, and they will die on this land, and that's all, no matter what. But some people, of course, think that they want to be safe, and their children want to be safe and just leave the country, and it's also a big problem for us.
One aspect of the war that you have unique insight into among many is attitudes among the lowest ranking soldiers, the ones in the trenches, on the front, doing the fighting and dying. Who you have managed to gain remarkable access to. They seem to trust you and open up to you in ways that I think are really enlightening and rare, and I recommend to everyone to watch Nasta's reports for lots of reasons, but among others, you get a really true picture. And
we have English subtitles you can watch.
A rare picture of what the people, the young Ukrainian, oftentimes actually not so young, sometimes 40, 50 plus, who are on
now mostly 40, 50 plus, yes.
Well, someone 40 plus myself, I would like, maybe that's still, I'd like to say that's still young, yes. Any case, what do you think would surprise us? Give us an insight into the take away the mythology, take away the, no, I don't want to call it false heroism. There's a lot of genuine heroism there, right? But take away the kind of veneer of PR and all the stories we want to tell ourselves about war, and particularly this war, where for those certainly in Ukraine and in Europe, there is a sense of a good side and a bad side, and we want to root for the good guy. But complicate that picture for us, not in saying making relativism between the two sides, but more like, what are the attitudes, what are the conversations, what are the people actually doing the fighting and dying say about what they're doing, and what do they tell you and want to share with the world?
I think that reality in our days, in trenches, not only in trenches, that the people are tired so much. Mostly soldiers are fighting for almost 2 years, and this is incredibly hard for them. But also, I feel that many of us, not even soldiers, but all of Ukrainians, feel some ashamed maybe also. Ashamed to talk that we are tired, ashamed to talk that we can't anymore, something like this, because like every soldier thinks that, okay, if I'm tired, who will be like after me, who can change me? And we understand that people who stay in line to take weapon at the beginning of war, they are not like exist anymore. Nobody wants to go to the front line voluntarily.
All of these patriotic volunteers, the pictures of people we saw lining up at the enlistment offices, I remember even from the first days of the war, there were stories, true or not, of people paying bribes to get into the army.
Yeah.
But that this is
it still happened, but maybe like, you know, sometimes.
But it's a very different picture now.
Yeah. It's, of course, it's a very different picture. Nobody wants to die, of course. Everyone understands that he will be not that one who will, I don't know, first one come to Crimea Peninsula with blue and yellow flag or something like this. Everyone understands that this is for a long period of time. Many men and women also, because we have also many women in the army, in the Ukrainian military, understand that they just spend their life in trenches. Even if they are not dying, they understand that their children grown up without them. They understand they don't know when it will be the end and when they can turn back home. And this is all the tough questions which we should talk about, but we also don't want to talk about because we don't have optimistic answer, I will say like this. And about ashamed.
I wanted to actually ask you about this moment of feeling shame or embarrassed, and you've talked to me about that before. Hard for me to imagine someone like you feeling ashamed about anything. I wouldn't imagine, I wouldn't think that that would be possible. I certainly never think about you in that way, but I understand reality is more complicated. You told me a story some time ago from the beginning of the war about when you went to visit a troop position on the border of the Kharkiv and Luhansk region. It was about this time last year, actually. It was wet, it was cold, the roads were muddy, it was miserable outside, you felt miserable, you had to leave early in the morning, I think it was still dark, and you get to the position.
5 a.m.
Yeah, and you drive through the mud, through the rain, and you get there, and the position itself, the roof is leaking, it's wet, it's cold, it's just as miserable in this kind of bunker dugout as it is outside, and you tell the guys, God, like, thinking that you'll bond with them by saying this, right? You say, wow, it's really miserable here, isn't it? And they look at you kind of confused and say, what are you talking about? Like, we're having a great time here. And that comment made you
and
feel...
they were absolutely honest. It's not some propaganda that they are happy to be there. Just that some press officer told them that if a journalist will ask you about how are you, you should say that I'm very happy here. No, it was an honest answer.
But why? Just tell us a bit more about that moment and why it made you feel, as either a Ukrainian, a journalist, both this feeling of shame or embarrassment, and what that moment meant for you, and perhaps how things might be different, as you imagine if you visited those guys today or a position like that today. Would you get a different answer?
Even like every day, today, for example, I think, okay, maybe I woke up early in the morning, I feel not very good, but I try to remember that the people in trenches now, Ukrainians in trenches, are -degrees, snow, they sleep in the trains, and this is just awful what we have in 21st century. And of course, I feel ashamed how I can think that I feel bad if people there on the front line are in these circumstances and then can die. They can die also. And about the ashamed, why these guys said that they are okay, not happy, but okay, because they told me after that, okay, we are here for 5 days. Yeah, it's wet, but after we will have 5 days in the town. We will take a shower and everything will be okay. And after next 5 days, we will be again in trains because it was an artillery unit. But our comrades in infantry, they are like 3 kilometers closer to the front line. Like actually, it's a front line, and they can die. It's shelling all the time, and they don't know when they will turn back to some place with shower, you know, and like they feel ashamed that they are in better circumstances than others. That people who are entrenched think that they are ashamed because someone in captivity. People who are in captivity are ashamed because they think that people in captivity from Azovstal, you know, what is Azovstal? Maybe it was factory in Mariupol, which was this city on the Azov Sea was under the siege for 3 months, and they were fighting these guys from Azov, and all of them were in captivity, and many of them still in the captivity, in Russian captivity. And yeah, all of us feel ashamed about something. People who leave the country feel ashamed that they are not in the country and not help too much to this country. My husband, who are not in the army, feel ashamed every day that he is not in the army. My father-in-law, who is in the army, in the military, and now in Kherson, feel ashamed that he is not on the left bank of Dnipro River, where some troops are, Ukrainian troops are. And yeah, this is like tough to talk about, even with each other sometimes, because we also feel angry about someone who are in better circumstances that we are.
Another thing I wanted to talk about, entirely natural and understandable, is fear, which I imagine, I know in your work is a particularly relevant and understandable condition. There's one of your reports that I love that shows, I think, everything about you, both your incredible physical courage, but also your deep humanity. You're walking through the so-called gray zone, this territory in between Russian and Ukrainian control. There's shelling all around. It's not even really clear exactly where Russian positions are. You're trying to get back to Ukrainian one, and you're with this Ukrainian general. I forget where you remember where in Ukraine this was?
Kharkiv.
Yeah, near Kharkiv. And the explosions get louder and closer. I mean, it's an undeniably scary situation. And you turn to the general and you say very sweetly, "Can I hold your hand?"
Yeah, and I took
yes,
his hand.
and he says yes, and you walk hand in hand.
But he told me, I am married, and I answer, I'm also married, but let's go together.
Right. I think he said, "What happens? What will your husband say when he sees this video?"
Yeah. I told him that he will understand.
Yes. I'm sure you didn't have any problems at home afterwards. And you tell the general, you say, you know, I feel safer holding your hand. Generals don't get killed, right? And so, which actually, alas, as we know, especially on the Russian side, is not true. But, nonetheless,
it was artillery shelling, and you know, artillery is like 20 kilometers was Russian artillery from us, but like of course these mines were near us, and I think, okay, how they see that this is general from 20 kilometers, but you know, you try to have this optimistic thoughts that the general can be killed, and maybe
well, it worked. Whatever. Yeah, your talisman for the day worked. You got out safely. But talk a bit about fear in your line of work, how it, in some cases, keeps you safe. In some cases, it helps you. In some cases, it's a hindrance. It can become all-consuming for understandable reasons. But I think we can even extrapolate. You don't have to be a frontline journalist in Ukraine to be afraid for your physical safety and to not know where to turn. There isn't always literally or metaphorically the hand of a general to hold. And talk a bit about fear in your own life and how you see it as a feature of Ukrainian life these days.
But I should add about this report. You should look, you should watch. Now it's turned on YouTube, I think 9 million or something like near 10 million viewers. It's very popular. And even I was took a part of one international conference with South America, and one journalist asked me about this report, like, you have such a good way to bring people to talk to you, and this moment with hands.
Right, it was a special trick you had rehearsed beforehand.
It's a special track. You track like how to make general talkative and everything. And I said it wasn't true. It wasn't track. It's like I was scared, and this was only my decision, like how to become more calm. Yeah, it was very funny. But about scare, I think that the big scare of Ukrainians and mine also, that you can't predictable anything anymore. And if you are a mother, if you are a wife, if you are editor-in-chief, if you are a journalist, and you understand that sometimes you even can't plan, I don't know, your manicure, because, for example, you want to go to manicure. And this is air raid siren. And I live on left bank of Kiev, and 2 bridges are closed when it's air raid siren. And I understand that I can't go to manicure anymore because it will be just traffic stop, even traffic stop. I can't turn the bridge. And that's all. And in that moment, you understand that you can't control your life anymore. And if you are 37 and try to be responsible for some things, you think that, okay, I can do nothing. And the future is absolutely unpredictable for you. And yeah, this is the most scared, maybe, moment of life. And also, every day I think that my husband, for example, will be mobilized to the army, maybe tomorrow or after tomorrow, we don't know. And what life will be after this, I don't know. 3 of my best investigative reporters are already in the army. And sometimes they also were mobilized this year. And sometimes I think that it was not just by accident, but maybe because they were so good investigative journalists and made some good investigative anti-corruption reports. Maybe that's why they are not journalists anymore, but they are soldiers now. And I woke up in the morning, like last week, and I thought, okay, if my partner in crime, my cameraman, my videographer, will be mobilized to the army, I don't know what I will do next. Yeah, this is my everyday thoughts about this life.
I want to ask about how you combine all these different identities. I mentioned it in my opening remarks about how you're a journalist, you're Ukrainian, you're a mom, you are covering the war, you have friends fighting and dying in the war. I'd like to read another passage from this essay on that subject about your friend, really your best friend, Vitaly Derech, from childhood. I unfortunately never got the chance to meet Vitaly in person. You were trying to introduce us when I was on a reporting trip to the Donbass region in the summer of 2022, in the first months of the invasion. As you remember, you were trying to reach Vitaly, to give him my contacts or his to me, and you couldn't reach him. I eventually had to leave Donbass, and the reason you couldn't reach him, it turned out, is that Vitaly had been killed. And you wrote very movingly about that, and I'll read in a moment I should say that in the months since his death, you've worked and managed to have Vitaly awarded the Hero of Ukraine, is that right? Award for
The
highest military honor in Ukraine. And I'll read a bit about Vitaly now. A month ago, my best friend died. In truth, I went to the front because he was there. A friend in the military called to tell me the news, but I didn't pick up the phone in time. When I looked at my phone, I saw that there were 2 missed calls. When you have 2 missed calls from a man on the front, it is clear right away. Your friend is dead. A month ago, there were a lot of dead. Every day, another person I knew. Every day. I returned the missed call. Every day, I was told what I already knew, that Vitalik was dead. I was shaken, but I did not cry. I had a tactical medicine training class to get to, and I didn't want to be late. That same evening, I had tickets to a stand-up comedy show where my husband was supposed to meet me. I was making a tourniquet in class while I tried to solve my dilemma. Would it be okay to go to stand-up comedy when Vitalik was dead? Would it be okay to laugh when they were transporting Vitalik to the morgue in Bakhmut? Would I find anything funny when my friend was going to identify the body? Was I spending my time wisely when it turns out the morgue in Bakhmut didn't have space for Vitalik's body, and only later I would find out he had to lie there for 3 days outside in the sun? They had to bury him in a closed casket. Before the show, my husband and I ate well at a restaurant, and then at the show we laughed. Do you understand how absurd this is? I wanted to disappear, to fall away, stop living, stop breathing, even more to simply stop eating, stop laughing. But what choice do you have? You are alive. Talk a bit about the condition of being alive in Ukraine in 2023, combining all these identities we've discussed as a journalist, as a mom, a husband, of someone who might be mobilized.
I want to add to the story that this was a period of time when every day someone I knew was killed on the front line. It was June of 2022, and it was a period of time, if you remember this, then we were waiting for a weapon from the West, heavy weapon. And we didn't have this weapon, and we had some Soviet artillery, but we didn't have mines to this artillery, mines and
shells, yeah.
and shells to this artillery. And that's why, like, every day 500, 300 people were killed on the front line. And this was maybe one of the hardest period of time in the front line that time. And the thing is that we had in our childhood another friend with Vitalik. His name was Victor, and Victor was killed in 2014. And Vitalik called me and told that he was killed. And after, Misha, who you knew, called me. This was 2 calls from him, and told me that
Misha's
Vitalik,
another soldier in this unit.
yeah,
right.
and told me that Vitalik was killed. And Misha was killed in 29 of September last year, and his body is still somewhere near Bakhmut because they couldn't took his body. And yeah, this is our real life. And sometimes I think that some of my friends try to ignore this real life and try to go to the cinema in Kyiv. And sometimes it's so funny to plan to go to the cinema, you know, because you try to go to the cinema and again, air rights alert, and the cinema is closed. No, and my friends say, okay, we will go to the next cinema, and they're like, after air rights silent alert. And I say, why we should go there? And she said, no, we will go, because like, and I said, okay, you try to ignore real life. Like, why you do this? And she says that, okay, I will pretend that we live normally in Kyiv now. And sometimes it looks like normal life. And I remember today this story about the restaurant. We were together in this restaurant in the central in Kyiv, and some foreign journalist came to Kyiv and say, in Kyiv everything is normal. why everyone think that it's war, something like this? We can eat breakfast, we can go for wine, everything is okay, and it's true. But it was one funny situation where it was a blackout period of time, also something like November last year or December, and we came with my husband to this restaurant in the morning, and like air raid siren turned on, and waitress came to our place and say, everything is okay, breakfast will be, don't worry, we have bomb shelter, everything will be 5 minutes, don't worry. We say okay, and we go to bomb shelters, and like
and they served you breakfast in the bomb shelter.
Yeah, it's like ground floor, but they have restaurants on the ground floor without windows and like more or less normal. And after 5 minutes, like the electricity turned off because blackout. And waitress come to us, and everything is normal. We have a generator. Breakfast will be 5 minutes. And it was like this. It was breakfast. It was good breakfast. Like, but this is about, you know, ignoring the reality. And nobody knows how long we can like do like this. Like, okay, we don't have electricity. Okay, like move on. We don't like selling. Okay, move on. Like change our plan all the time, every day, and move on. But sometimes you think, okay, I can't anymore. I just want to stop. I just want some house on the Carpathian Mountains, on the hill, and don't think about news. Don't think about war. Just forget about this or something like that.
Well, talk a bit about that in your own context, which I think is true for much or all of Ukrainians, a combination of exhaustion. It's a very different mood, I know, from my own trips to Ukraine than it was a year and a half ago, certainly. People are much more pessimistic, melancholy, exhausted. But at the same time, it feels like there's no real alternative than to continue.
Still, there is no alternative than to continue.
But how does that feel for you personally, as a journalist and as a Ukrainian? For you, how do you feel this combination of personal exhaustion, a desire, frankly, to do something else, be somewhere else, which I also know from my own reporting and from your own stories that many soldiers on the front say this. Now, we want to be somewhere else. This is understandably, of course, right? That we don't want to be here. We'd rather be back with our families doing anything but this. But yet, we have no choice. And so how does that feel to you personally? How do you feel your own exhaustion, but also lack of any alternative?
I think that we have also a very big problem with we have telemarathon. Maybe if you are interested in Ukrainian problems in war, and many channels are in this telemarathon.
It's a kind of state-run, non-stop television program.
Yes. And in this telemarathon, like they try to give some hope all the time, an optimistic view, and people believed in this optimistic view till this summer, I think, because many journalists, experts, politicians told that we will be in Crimea and this year, and now it's November, you see. And in September, we tried, like many of us, become understand that we will not be in Crimea in summer, and even in autumn, and in winter, and next year also. And I think that because we had so much hope, now people understand that we don't have this hope anymore, and this become very depressive. And of course, inside Ukraine, many people become angry and try to find someone who should be punished for this, and someone who will be responsible. And we see how in the office of the president, some people want to say that general staff is military general staff is responsible for this, and in the army, people think that the office of the president and president are responsible for this. Mm-hmm. And we are afraid, the most what Ukrainians are afraid of, that we will be not united anymore, and that's why we will lose this war.
I'm going to take some questions from the audience. By the way, I think that there's some information on the screen or online about how to send questions, which I'm getting here on the iPad, and I'll take a few now, but please ask more. There's a few here, Nastya, that talk about or ask about the attitude among soldiers about how they're supported by the Ukrainian state, but I think really the interesting question is by the West. So much has been discussed here in Germany, in the US, across Europe about the military aid going to Ukraine. Has it been enough? Has it been at the right tempo, the right material at the right time? What's the view, not just from inside Ukraine, but specifically on the front lines, in the trenches, the people who are actually would be using these weapons in Ukraine's defense? How do they feel about what they're being supplied with? Is it enough? Are they satisfied? Are they the opposite? Do they feel let down by the West?
I had one report, and in this report, one guy, one soldier told that West says that they want victory for Ukraine, but I don't believe in this. They just want us not to die, like so much people die every day, and that's all. Like they help in just as much as just we can stay in our positions, and that's all, not for our victory. And it's popular thoughts from the soldiers, from the, not even soldiers, but command officer staff. And fun fact is that press officer after asked me to cut this this phrase about like that the West doesn't want us to...
One of the soldiers said that, the soldier who said that the West wants us not to lose but isn't ready to help us win.
Yes, yes.
And then they told you to cut it.
Cut because West will be like angry and it's not okay. They try to help us and this phrase is not okay. But we decided to leave this in our report.
Well, that reminds me of a question of my own, which is how you navigate covering the war as an absolutely professional journalist, and you, as I've mentioned several times, retain these core journalistic principles and a real adherence to the truth above all. But this truth, as we've discussed, is not always flattering or inspiring in every detail for Ukraine. But you yourself are a Ukrainian, not just citizen, patriot, come from a family in Western Ukraine for whom Ukrainian identity is very important. How do you navigate this dilemma? Does it feel like a dilemma when you are out in the field and see something, film something, uncover something that you know is very true, it's real, it happened, and is also illustrative of the larger issues facing Ukraine and facing the army, but you know that this detail is not a flattering one, it's not an inspiring one. In fact, maybe it's the opposite. It paints Ukraine or its military, at least in this small way, in a negative light. How do you navigate that dilemma?
About our next, another report from Bakhmut, it was in February this year. Bakhmut still was under Ukrainian control, but it was a very tough situation there for Ukrainian troops. And one of the soldiers told us that like we are here for 3 days, and it was preparation for us, like training for us for 2 weeks, and now we assault the Russian position. We stormed the Russian position. What, like the assault troops, like after 2 weeks of trainings, and this was a very problematic report for us after. And
why? Problematic how?
Because it's a like hard topic for commanders, like about bad preparation. But this is like not because Ukrainian army doesn't want to prepare our soldiers normally, but we don't have sometimes places for these trainings enough because too many troops. Now we have like near 1 million people in the army, not only in the army, in National Guard, but all of this number, it's like near 1 million people, and but for general staff, it's some topic they don't want to discuss, you know, about not good training, not good preparations, and it was the problem. But this soldier told us, but like, okay, what they can do to me, like my commanders, we have like freedom of speech, yes? And like just look at me. And I said, okay, I can't cut this phrase because we have freedom of speech and he should. But after, he was also in artillery, and after I found out that they like took him from artillery to infantry because of this
As punishment.
phrase. Yes, and thanks God he's alive and everything is okay, because in other case I will all my life think that I'm guilty because of his death.
But are there some moments that you think?
But why it's important to
Right.
show? Why it's important to show? Because you know, so much people in the army. You know, some of them are someone's husband, and of course, husband writes something to his wife. Wife tells something to her friends, and like they understand that the picture is different from something that we can see from telemarathon, for example. And I always think about my audience that my audience is more clever than me, maybe, and they will understand if it will be like some too much optimistic picture of reality, you know. And I will always think that if we have problem, we should somehow understand how to solve this problem, not to hide this problem, because it will not help us to win.
Is that an argument you have with colleagues, other Ukrainian journalists? Certainly I know it must be an argument you have with people in
All the
presidential
time, from
administration or military,
2014.
that you know, that kind of true patriotism in this moment is to always make sure that there's a pretty picture about Ukraine, a positive picture. And your position is that true patriotism, supporting Ukraine, supporting the Ukrainian military, is to show the truth so that these problems can be observed and hopefully addressed.
Yeah.
Is it difficult for you to hold on to that position 2 years into the war?
It's difficult, but we have, you know, we don't have this professional army which all the people have contract with the army and know how to fight. This army today, it's yesterday they were, I don't know, journalists also, or professors, or IT engineers, or someone else, and many of them don't know how the structure is working, you know, I mean, in the army. And many commanders understand why the truth is important, and that's why we can show some truth, yes, some reality, because thanks for them. But we have this joke that small Soviet army never win to big Soviet army, and that's why we should change and be more democratic, more quick, more...
So the joke is that a small Soviet army will never defeat a larger Soviet army.
A large Soviet army.
So you have to be a non-Soviet army.
If Ukrainian will steal Soviet army, we'll never win, because Russia is big Soviet army.
Bigger version of the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah. We have a question here about mobilization and how it's working now, nearly 2 years into the war. We talked about it. You talked about how all of the enthusiastic, ultra-patriotic volunteers have largely joined a long time ago. They're either in the army, many of them are dead, and at the current moment, Ukraine is left with people who don't necessarily want to go, or actively don't want to go fight. And how is this playing out in Ukrainian society? Mobilization continues. The army needs people very desperately. And they're reaching deeper and deeper into Ukrainian society to draft people who, for whatever reason, didn't want to or don't want to fight. Are they reaching into different generations? Is the age of people being drafted changing? How is this not just a military question at the moment, but a socio-political one in Ukraine.
We have also a very big question with demobilization, because people who are on the front line think that, okay, we want to turn back to our home and someone should change us. And this is the hard question about like, okay, let's turn back home. This 1 million of people, I change to another 1 million, but we don't have this another million who wants to fight, you know. And sometimes, we see this video how people on the streets in uniform take someone just on the bus stop or somewhere else. But still, many of my friends, even my husband, our friends, our relatives, say if I will receive this
draft notice,
draft notice, I will go. Like, it's not like I don't want to go, but if army will need it me, I will go. And this is like popular opinion that if I will need it, I will go. But I don't want to go voluntarily.
There are a few questions here about hope in various forms. We were talking on the way over how both of us have an aversion to trying to paint a picture of solutions and how there could be a resolution and how things might get better, that we feel like it's a bit of a distraction from paying attention to the reality, oftentimes uncomfortable and ugly reality of the here and now, by telling ourselves a story about how things might change in the future, and that kind of lets off the pressure or takes away the urgency to look square in the eye of the truth as it is today. Let's talk a bit about the future, hopeful or not. And I'm going to combine a few questions here and ask about define the terms victory and defeat, basically. And when Ukrainians today, yourself personally, think about victory, what does that mean? You've alluded to, and I think it's just clear, that victory is unlikely to mean Ukraine returning to the borders of 1991 with you in summer holiday in Crimea next year, right? I think that the idea of victory has been dialed down somewhat, but to what? What does victory look like? And on the reverse side, if Ukraine is not victorious, but rather is defeated, is the kind of opposite of victory, what does that look like? What does either scenario mean to you today?
It's still about the border of 1991. Victory means like turn back to this border, and we understand that it's maybe will be never, or I don't know, next 10 years or 20 years will not possible for us. And about defeated, actually the situation which we have now is maybe the worst, because if everything will stay as it is, it will be the worst situation for us, because nobody believes that if, for example, we will have some negotiations with Russia, it will just stop the war. Maybe it will stop the war for like 2 years or 3 years, and after they will come again to Kyiv, to Kyiv, to Kharkiv, to, I don't know, Odessa as a city.
A Russian analyst actually the other day mentioned an interesting comparison, which somehow I hadn't thought of, which was with the 2 Russian wars in Chechnya, in that the first war in the mid-90s began with this disastrous, totally bungled invasion of Grozny, which went horribly wrong from the first day. Thousands of Russian troops were killed. It was a big embarrassment for Moscow, and Russia ended up being forced, really, to sign this kind of peace deal, which gave Chechnya a kind of quasi-autonomy, but really all that did was allow Russia to buy time for its military and state to become more strong, more coherent. Putin comes to the presidency, and with this new, stronger military, Russia invades Chechnya again and accomplishes what it wasn't able to some years before. And this Russian, an analyst of Russian politics and military, suggested this to me as a scenario for exactly what Russia might do, how Russia might treat peace talks.
But it's already happened with Ukraine. In 2014, they took Crimea, after they took the part of Donetsk and Luhansk region, and now they took also part of Zaporizhia region, part of Kherson region. And if they will, and they will, of course, they will turn back. We know that they will turn back more, maybe better prepare. And the fact is that Russia has 146 million of people, and we have something near 40 now. And like, counting is not on our side. Because just people finished, you know, in Ukraine. It's a problem.
There's a question here which
But maybe if it will be like after 15 years, my son will grow on and can be also the fighter, you know, and I'm also scared about this.
That's something you think about already, is that your 3-year-old son,
course.
when will it be his
Of
turn
course.
to go to the army?
Of course. You know, I'm thinking that maybe some of you know about the Orange Revolution, which was in 2004, and I was 18, and I was student. I was studying journalism, but I was on the first course of journalism, and I was very active in the Orange Revolution. And it was 20 years ago, actually, and now I'm 37, and I understand that more than half of my life I'm fighting for something, you know, for values, for state without corruption, for state without police who can beat just people on the street, or rich people who can, I don't know, drive the car drunk and everything. And we are still on this fight, and it becomes worse and worse and worse. And yeah, that's why I'm thinking that maybe Ostap will fight for this country after 15 years.
There's a question here I definitely want to ask because it concerns both of us, and I'm interested to hear your opinion on the difference between male and female war correspondents covering Ukraine. I don't know if I quite allow myself to consider myself a war correspondent per se, but you certainly are. You've observed lots of correspondents at work, Ukrainian and foreign, and is there a difference between how men and women cover the war?
I want to talk a little bit about this picture, like face of frontline correspondent in Ukraine, and I will say that this is the face of something like 25, 27 person, and it's woman face. It's not man face. Why? Because many men who were journalists, who were good journalists, frontline reporters in 2014, 15, and after, they are now also in the army. They are fighting. They are not journalists anymore. 37 journalists were killed in Ukraine. Many of them were soldiers, not journalists anymore, but they were very good journalists before. Some of them were still journalists, and they were killed. And mostly women are working on the front now, mostly women. And this is our reality, and I don't know what is this fact about, but yeah, mostly men are somewhere on the front. Sometimes men which think about bigger salary go to work as a fixer for frontline for foreign correspondent as you are. And yeah, only women left. But what is working as a frontline correspondent when you are a woman? I think sometimes it's easier to work because mostly on the front line are men, and they can take you somewhere where they will not take men.
Why?
Because I don't know, it's more calm, more interest talk with women, and that's why they can take you somewhere. Sometimes they don't want to take you because you're a woman and you will be too scared, too afraid of something, and it's better to take men. I had only one story which was very strange for me. It was in 2015 when we had this second Minsk agreement, and it was near Debaltseve. After this second Minsk agreement, Debaltseve was become under Russian control. And I was on the front line in the midnight, and my idea was that I should listen to the silent, because it should be silent, like peace, because of negotiations. And I thought, okay, we will see if it will be peace and silent or not. And I came to my friends, soldiers, and after 5 minutes, one colonel came and said, what women do here? And he just say, like, get out. And it was 15 minus degrees, and I just left, and that's all. And it was like, you know, that woman on the ship, it's like what, bad luck.
Omen, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was the same. It's bad luck. Maybe it's because of me, this negotiation, the second peace agreement, were so
But you think that it also allows you, not just being a woman, it's really who you are, to be vulnerable, to be honest. I mentioned this scene with the general whose hand you ask to hold. There's another report, I think you're outside near Bakhmut with a tank unit, and you're trying repeatedly and failing to climb up on the tank, and you keep sliding off. And you, to your credit, you leave this in the video. I think it's actually the opening scene of the report of you repeatedly slipping off the front of this tank very awkwardly, but charmingly. And you have this disarming way of using. Again, using makes it sound like it was a rehearsed trick, and it wasn't. But your genuine vulnerability, I think, is disarming. That's not necessarily about being a woman, but I think that it definitely, you can see how it makes people open up to you. You're not trying to always be cool, strong, brave, capable of everything.
Because, you know, why people want to see and to watch these reports, because it's something like they can put themselves on my position, like someone who is civilian, who is afraid of war, who is afraid of shelling, who is afraid to die, everything, you know, and they understand that they can be in my position and they can look like definitely the same as I am. And of course, it's not like, I look at this picture and it's not very nice, but it's the reality, and we can't cut the reality, you know. It looks like sometimes not very nice.
There's a good question I'm interested myself in about how events in Israel and Gaza and the war there influence the situation in Ukraine. Is there a sense that this new war, which you can just see in terms of international headlines, attention, media coverage, has pushed out Ukraine? People's attention is a kind of zero-sum game. If the more attention people spend on one thing, less on another, certainly when it comes to international conflict. And so has the attention on the conflict in Israel and Gaza, well, it has, I think, objectively, pushed out some attention and coverage of Ukraine. But what does that mean? Are you and others in Ukraine worried about this? Does it feel like there is only so much attention and support to go around, and Ukraine might end up losing some of it because of the attention on this other conflict?
Sometimes I think that we are like fighting, I mean, journalists, that we are fighting for like which country has like more blood, you know, on the screen or something like this. And this is very cynical, I think. But this is also our reality. I mean, world reality is it's okay, something that's happened on the other side of the world. Let's go and watch this. And okay, Ukraine is like no more Ukraine anymore. No more news from Ukraine. We are tired from news of Ukraine, but we have new news from Israel. Okay, let's watch this. And it's sad. What I can say, it's sad. And I see also many foreign correspondents which are not in Ukraine anymore, and they are in the border between Gaza Strip and Israel. And sometimes we have also this joke in Ukraine. I mean, we are Ukrainian journalists, that some foreign journalists came to Ukraine for their Pulitzer Prize. And if it's not interesting anymore, they should go to some other place to find their Pulitzer Prize there. Not all of them, not about you. No, and
I've only come to Munich in
and
search
I don't
of my
want,
Pulitzer
you know,
Prize.
and I don't want to say that only Ukrainian journalists can cover Russian-Ukrainian war, because only we understand what's happened with us. Because sometimes I see, as my colleague from Ukraine also find this the best, you know, the best picture of suffering, of people suffering, and sometimes I see how foreigner correspondents stay. For example, Joshua was for 2 weeks in Izum without lift, without electricity, try to understand what's happening in this small town which was under occupation. And in something about that, journalists try to understand what's happened in reality, what's happened on the ground, but not all of journalists think in this way. And yeah, sometimes I see that they were here and now they were in some other place. And also, maybe you saw also this picture on the Times Square with all these screens on Times Square in New York, and it was like on the screen like support Ukraine, and next it was like another screen like support Israel, and this support Israel just like took off this support Ukraine. And
Sometimes
yeah.
it feels like that.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like that.
2 last questions. I'll take one from the audience, and then I'm going to reserve the right to ask the last one myself. Quickly, if it's possible, to make this a quick answer. We're in Germany. You have an opportunity to speak to a German audience. There was a question about what Germany can or should do. Take the opportunity to answer however you'd like.
The honest question, the honest answer, it's an answer as Ukrainian, not as a journalist, that yeah, it's true that support is not enough. Yeah, we are very grateful for all the support with weapon, with money, with everything, but it's not enough, and war is very expensive. I think that every one of you knows this. But it's not enough, and I think that if we are talking about values, you know that for many of Ukrainians, and for me also, and for Vitalik, who was killed, this is my best friend, the war was started on 20th of February in 2014, where Ukrainian police killed 48 activists near Maidan Square in the central part of Kyiv. And you know that this was period of time when was Revolution of Dignity or Euromaidan. Maybe you heard about this. And this was our protest, I mean Ukrainian protest again against that Yanukovych decided not to sign the agreement with European Union. And just people went to the street and say, no, we want to go to European Union. And for me, for many of us, it's not about like, we want to go to European Union just because we want European money and we don't want to have visa and just travel around Europe and that's all. No, we want to have the same values, and for many of us, it's not just words, you know, and people are dying, people are killed because of these values.
As we've discussed, actually, Ukraine, I believe, is the only country where people have died in the streets under the banner of the European Union flag. Nowhere in Europe has it actually happened, but it's happened in Ukraine.
Yes, and you know, sometimes I think that it's not fair to sit in a comfortable chair somewhere in Berlin, Munich, London, New York, no matter what country, and talk about these values, about freedom of speech, about human rights or something like this, and do not enough for this, because like, yeah, we are actually dying for these values, because we don't want, you know, it's not about just we are fighting for territory, like Russian came to our territory with their tanks, and that's why we should, of course, for this also, and we should fight in for our territory, but also for that we don't want be with that police which was till 2013, and it changed, of course. And we understand, and even we not only understand, but we saw how Russians, what Russian did in occupation territory of Ukraine, because some of this territory are liberated now, and people just in shock about this period of time for them.
Last question. We have just a few minutes. And I know you and I both...
sorry, I want to add,
yes.
And this was my so long answer about why we need this support more, because it's not only about us, like about Ukrainians, like help us because we are suffering, but about all the Europe and all about all these values. It's just only words, or it means more.
You and I both don't like false optimism and feeling like we are somehow forced to end on a positive note. But this isn't necessarily a positive question, but it's an honest question. And I'm curious if you could talk about what you have learned about heroism and bravery as it actually exists, right? Not the cinematic version or the mythologized version, but what real everyday human bravery looks like. There's another one of your reports that I remember watching and very struck by about Liman, a city in eastern Ukraine. I believe you were there just before. It was occupied and since been liberated, but this report was filmed as Russian troops were advancing on Liman before it was occupied. And in it, there's a story of a police officer who goes into an area of the city that's under heavy shelling to rescue or evacuate a mother and her son, and the son is physically handicapped in some way. He's not able to, or very ill. No, I'm sorry.
No,
he's been
he
injured.
was wounded.
Yeah, right, wounded. I'm sorry, but he's not mobile because he's been wounded. And at great personal risk to himself, this police officer goes and rescues them in a way that no one would have minded, no one would have judged him, no one would have said a word if he didn't do this. It was just this kind of singular, almost spontaneous act of bravery that I know you were very struck by and showed in this report. And I'm wondering if you could talk either about that episode or just more in general, what your 2 years of reporting on the war has taught you about what courage actually looks like. Not the movie version, but the real, sometimes, I don't want to say banal, I don't know if courage can be banal, but just the everyday, real version of courage.
Yeah, this story still inspired me because, you know, and sometimes the answer is why I'm continuing to do this, because sometimes you just can be witness of some miracle things, you know, and this case was something like a miracle, because you can't imagine that ordinary person, just ordinary guy decide in one moment to go somewhere where he can be killed like after 10 minutes, because this home with this young guy was like 30 meters from the front line, and nobody, even people in the army, nobody wanted to rescue him, and it was wounded like 5 days before, and like mother tried to call when it was some connection, but nobody wanted to go there, and he decided like, okay, I will go, and he rescued him, and after, like, we took this guy to doctors, and in the evening, doctors answer us by message that he will die like till this evening if you will not rescue him. And in that moment, when his name is Max, this policeman, when Max came back, and my partner Kalan says to him, like, took his hand and say, Max, like, Heroyam Slava, like, glory to the heroes. And this is such a moment of time. Even now, I'm talking about this, and I'm like feel like, you know, that. And he is a like ordinary hero, and you can't imagine why people decide to do this, why people risk their life for life of someone else. It's something like unlogical, unpredictable, not normal, because I will not go to rescue someone. No, I'm afraid, sorry. And this is something like, and be a witness of this like everyday miracle. It's something, I think it means a lot and costs a lot.
Well, it means a lot to us that you are that witness. I want to say thank you again for your work. Thanks for being here tonight. I hope you know how much I admire you as a journalist and as a person. It's a privilege to know you. And
Thank you.
I hope to see you soon in Ukraine. Thank you all.
Thank you both so much. Is this on? Thank you both so much. Before we go, I have a few thank yous, and the first thank you is to Josh and to Nastya. I am truly humbled to share a stage with you. That last story. And I've said it before, I do really believe it, and I'm going to take it from Timothy Snyder again. I believe that the journalists are the heroes of our time, and I thank you very much for what you do. Before we go, can you please tell everyone where they can find you? How do they follow you?
How do we watch your reports?
I write everything in my Twitter. It's the same Stanko Nastya, you can find me. And on YouTube also.
But YouTube on the Hromadske channel?
Now Slidstvo, before it was Hromadske. And at Hromadske they post also reports and investigation. You can watch there.
And they have English subtitles, so they're all watchable in English.
Yeah, we have English subtitles. Welcome, please watch.
Okay. You give that to me and we'll try to put it up on our website. That might make it easier. And Josh, of course, writes for The New Yorker. And if you followed what I wrote last week or a few weeks ago, if you live in southern Bavaria, or if you live anywhere in Germany near your local German-American association, the library online has The New Yorker for free. So you can read Josh. So, other thank you. I'd like to thank Bard College Berlin for being a part of this tonight and making it possible. The team here at America House for their hospitality, always, and for 5 years of fabulous cooperation. And when I say team, I mean everyone from the top and Dr. Zingenberger all the way down to everyone who does the worker bees and make it all so professional and wonderful. The tech team in the back, can we give it up? A thank you also to the Melior Foundation for their generosity and for their interest in supporting transatlantic and pro-democracy initiatives. And finally, I want to thank all of you and all of you who have supported and donated and make these events possible. We couldn't do it without you. And if you have not yet signed up to get our emails, you can do so on our website, dialoguesondemocracy.com. And if you like what we're doing, I hope you will think about putting us in your philanthropy mix at the end of the year. It's really easy to give on our website, and it's all tax deductible in Germany. So now I'm going to say goodbye to everybody watching online. Thank you very much for joining us.